Live from Nashville, Tennessee, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I am your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are streaming via Facebook Live and YouTube Live. If you have any questions for me or my guests, please enter it into the comments. You're welcome to enter it in any time, and we will take questions at the end. Without further ado, Jay, thank you so much for joining the show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. So basically for the audience, if you're out there listening, how the show format goes is we're going to interview Jay about her job. You're going to learn more about it. We did have some questions that came in on email. We'll ask her, and that's when we'll go into the comment section and read your Facebook Live questions or YouTube Live question. So Jay, what is your exact position and your title?
Yeah, so I am a podcast producer at Sweetfish Media. I recently started just at the end of July. I just graduated college, and so it's so cool to be able to, get a position during these crazy times.
And so you kind of explained how long you've been doing it. What did you major in? Any education or certifications that you have?
Yeah, so I actually majored in strategic. Well, my school does this thing where you could pair two concentrations together and create your own major. So kind of a silly story. Me and my grandma, we were on Wheel of Fortune back in 2017.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was such an amazing experience. They flew our whole family out to Disney World. And being at Disney World, I loved it. Obviously, it's magical. But shooting the show, seeing everything that goes into, just a 23-minute episode, we were shooting for 8 hours. And so I've changed my major like 6 times. But literally once I went and I saw the production of everything that went into that show, I came back and I changed my major the last time. I did something called the BGS program, which is the Bachelor's of General Studies. And I was able to combine my original degree, which was public relations, but now named strategic communication, with journalism. I did some research at what other schools were doing, since I go to a D2 school. It's not a D1 school. It's not Ivy League. So I had to do some research on what other people were doing to see what I needed to make sure that I would be successful. So I paired strategic communication with journalism. And that was my main concentration. But I'm a dancer first. I'm a choreographer. So I have a minor in dance and a minor in entrepreneurship as well.
Wow. So kind of a jack of all trades, if you will.
Yes. But one day I will get that master's degree. They say jack of all trades, masters of none. So I will go back and get that master's eventually. But I need a break. I've been at school for 6 years.
Great story. Now, so what is, if someone's looking at a producer at a podcast company, they may be sitting out there saying, what the heck does that even mean? Could you break it down? Like, let's say somebody's like, what's a producer? What do you do exactly?
Yeah. So it's a little bit different at my company because we at Sweetfish, we work with B2B brands specifically. And so, but what I did, I had an internship through like May, from May up until right at the end of July. And so what podcast, obviously, it's just basically kind of like music, but basically it's just a talk show for somebody who is giving you words of wisdom or advice. They might have a guest of their show of different talking points. And so what the producer of that show may do, they may be the one who edits the music. They may be the one who edits all the graphics that might go along with the show. They may be the person who's writing the podcast content. So maybe like a LinkedIn post or something like that. But what I'm blessed is with Sweetfish, I am actually more of like a project manager, along with we do some strategic practices for engagement and just see how their show is doing and things like that. So I work more on the strategy side, along with more project management, because my company is a larger company. But if you're just starting out, anybody can pretty much produce a podcast. So it's very, very, it's easy to do. With podcasting, it's a lot easier than a YouTube video. There's so much that goes into that, and everybody wants to be a YouTube star and all these things, which is totally great. But with podcasting, it's more sustainable because it's strictly audio. Some people do pair it with video, might shoot some micro videos out just to make sure that they're helping supplement their content. But really, with podcasting, it is mostly audio based. So, yeah, I do more project management and strategic engagement.
Gotcha. And so when you say strategic engagement, that means you're planning out what companies to reach out to. Is that correct? Or what clientele?
So we basically, my the CEO of our company, James Carberry, he coined the term content-based networking. And so basically the theme behind that is with that content-based networking, you are using content to reach out to basically somebody who you would like to have a guest as your show, where it wouldn't typically be your everyday person that you would reach out to. It'd be like your Gary V or someone like that, and you might not necessarily have, someone as big as Gary Vee right away, but somebody who you want to reach out to. And it makes it to where you're able to reach out to these people and make a genuine connection with them through creating that content. And it's not just, hey, I want to sit down and ask you 20 questions for 20 minutes. A lot of times people, they reach out to people and they're not adding value when they ask them a lot of questions. People are busy. And so by creating that content, what you're doing is asking leaders of that industry questions, kind of like what you're doing right now, leaders of industry, questions about what they do, and they might not necessarily be the famous person, but because they are not necessarily getting all the limelight all the time, they have a different point of view or different perspective to offer the world, and you create that connection or that bond. I know I was supposed to come on your show earlier, and we had some things happen. So me and you have been in contact. So that's just more of an example of content-based networking, because now we have kind of like a working relationship, content relationship, just because of us working together on your show. So that's kind of like a just a glimpse into content-based networking. But yeah.
No, it's the explanation. I appreciate you saying that. So what's some of the things you look at your job, what are you passionate about now in your career? What do you really love about it?
I really love project management, but I really love how it's remote. I know a lot of times people are used to the corporate life and being in the office, but I graduated into COVID. I literally graduated in May, and I had no idea what life was going to bring. And so I call our class of 2020 the COVID class because there's absolutely no way that we would know what to do. It's not a typical graduation. It's not a typical workforce anymore. So we're literally in the middle of, pioneering a different era of what work will be. And so I actually quite enjoy it because it gives me the opportunity to have a better work-life balance, a work and home life balance. I'm able to travel absolutely anywhere. Our company actually doesn't even have an office, and that was before COVID. We were just automatically, remote work based. And so because of that, I really enjoy this environment. I get to be with my family. Right now I'm visiting my boyfriend's family, and I'm still able to get work done. So I really enjoy that part of it.
And now on the flip side, this might be a little bit challenging, but what is something that you dislike about it, or something that somebody should know? Let's say they're watching this interview and they're like, they should be prepared with it. Kind of might be tough.
I would say that it helps to get your feet wet in a lot of different areas. And if you don't necessarily have experience, in areas of graphic design or areas of audio engineering or areas like that, it's definitely not impossible for you to go into this field, but it helps because you will have a stronger understanding when communicating with the other departments, being able to communicate, different things that you need on a flyer, different things that you might need on, the cover art for the show. being able to have a stronger input because you're aware of what's going on would definitely help in those kind of situations. I've done audio engineering my own self for other shows previously to me working for Sweetfish, edited music for my dance team, so having that experience allowed me to understand, hey, whenever an audio engineer might get me something that might need review or might need something to be redone, I'm able to reach out to them and let them know, hey, go back and cut this for me if that's okay with you, and move forward like that. So it helps to be able to have those strong communication skills within lots of different departments.
And you think back to when you were in grade school, let's say third, fourth, fifth grade. If you rewind your life, what did you dream about being when you were young? Was there ever a career that stood out and said, I want to be that when I grow up?
So my ultimate heart is always going to say dancer because I'm a choreographer first. Like I said, I love dance. I do everything dance. I had my own dance company in college. And so my heart is always going to be to dance. But as far as career goes, honestly, I had no idea what I would be. I think that's why I changed my major so many times, because I always was that girl who wanted to do everything. Like when I was younger, I played like I was the weather girl. I wanted to, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a teacher. There's so many things. My parents, or a lot of people in my family, they're educators. We have some nurses in our family. A lot of them are business owners. So I was so open to what the world had to offer that I was like, how can somebody pick one career? Like for the rest of my life, I had no idea. So I was fortunate enough to be able to understand that in that time in my life in college, this is when you should be experimenting. You're younger, late teens, early 20s, 30s, on, however long you're in college or whenever you're there. That's when you should be experimenting those things. So I was upset because I felt like I needed to be on a specific path at a specific time, right? Because like I graduated high school class of 2014, and it's just now 2020. I'm just now graduating, so I always felt like I was behind the ball because I've been in school for so long, supposed to graduate, change my major again, but all those different experiences led me to this point, and I'm still trying everything. I'm still getting different experiences, and so for me, what landed me to podcasting was honestly on a whim. I didn't even start podcasting. I didn't touch or listen to podcasts really until the end of May. And I worked with Daniel Botero with Mastering College to Career. And he actually helped me just kind of discover that and find myself. And I got more confidence in that situation. And he hired me as his podcast producer. And from there, I took those skills and he made something which was called a Potential Proof Project. And I used that project to kind of leverage and reach out to the people at Sweetfish. And from there, that's where I was hired. So I had so much going on. I had my hands in a little bit of everything, like you were saying, like kind of a jack of all trades. But I would just say any advice to anybody is literally try it all. Like you have time, you're young, try it all. Like I was a janitor at one point at the university. Like I literally did everything that you could think of. And all of those experiences led me to where I am today.
So let's dissect this animal and take it small parts at a time, because I love this, because you're not atypical. In other words, when I talk to college students or professionals, what I find is a lot of them, especially the college route, high school route, they don't know what they want to do, honestly. And I think a little bit of it's our fault, because in high school and grade school, we don't spend enough time on educating people on career pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's 821 career pathways out there in North America. But when I graduated high school or college, I could probably name 15. And so if we don't know that these careers are out there, if a high school student is sitting there and they didn't even know they could be a producer of a podcast, then how can they know really what career they want to do? And so that's one component of it. But what I think, what you said in your story, you've changed your careers multiple times. It was hard to pinpoint one. I think that's very common. You're not alone. In fact, that was me. in college. Never did it. I don't think a lot of times we spend a lot of time on it. Not speaking for yourself, but I didn't. I just simply went into college. I was like, I want to be in business, so I guess I'll major in business. But I didn't like accounting, and I just fumbled through all these and finally landed in one in marketing, and then finished my degree. And I don't think sometimes I didn't spend enough time career developing or discovering what I really wanted to do. And you mentioned something else that I love. So you said throw it, you're doing multiple things. I encourage that in my new book. Diversify your career portfolios. Financial advisors tell you all the time, diversify your financial portfolios because it shields you from risk. Why aren't people doing that with their careers? If you're passionate about something, like you mentioned dance and choreography, this is where I'm going to lead the train around the circle. Sorry, I get really passionate about this, but this is where I want to lead you back to asking you, because in a way, I think you found your passion, your niche right now. And let's say most people's jobs change in 3 years. Millennials change their job on the average of 3 years. So when I first got into sales, I loved it. It was just a passion of mine. And then guess what? After 10 years, I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's okay. You can change it, but I want you to be happy in that moment and then that time. So you talked about your passions, really choreography, dance, music. Guess what common themes are behind your career? You're doing podcasts for probably that type of genre, right? So you were able to tie all this in and do something you're passionate about, right?
Yeah, so the podcasts that we do with Sweet Fish, they're not necessarily related to that. They're more technology based, but because that field is open, podcasting in general is so broad. There's literally a podcast for everything. I'm definitely gonna start my own one of these days. It told me to. But yeah, I think it's a way to have a glimpse and a niche into whatever field that you're interested in. So I could literally start a dance podcast and talk about those things, talk about the dance industry through that. And whatever you're passionate about, music, leadership, there's so many different podcasts out there, especially right now, where those kind of industries, performing industries, you're not getting there's dance studios that are closing down right now because of COVID, or people can't be in the theater, or people can't be in the arts. So I think that it would be an amazing kind of move for people to shift into podcasting right now and talk about their industry, talk about what they're feeling, talk about those pain points that they're going through right now. And everyone's in a shift right now. So I think now is the perfect time for any industry to make a shift and to kind of touch onto podcasting. It has definitely grown just in this short amount of time. And what we're seeing is, and this isn't to downplay anyone else's, struggles during this time, but our company has grown so much during this time. And the podcast industry has grown so much during this time, because A, we're a remote-based company. B, everyone's listening to podcasts. You can do podcasting, listen to podcasts as you're doing everything else. You could be mowing your lawn, you could be sweeping, you got the kids at home, whatever's going on. Everyone can listen. It's just like music. Everyone can listen to podcasts during these times. So it's a growing industry, especially right now. And I could not have picked a better career for this time. I had no idea it existed. Like, just how many months ago? Since May. I had no idea. Never touched it. We didn't learn about it really too much in school. This was literally just a blessing that fell into my lap. And I'm not going to say that I wasn't prepared to do it, because all those different experiences that I encountered did lead me to this moment. I was able to talk about my dance team and my experience in leadership there. When applying for the job, I was able to talk about, hey, this was a time of me literally going through the struggle, and I had no money in college. So I asked if I could be a janitor and help pay for school. Those kind of experiences all led me to this moment. But what you'll see in podcasting is there are so many, we're people, everyone's human. And so all of the experiences that people talk about in podcasting, a lot of them are from learned experiences and networking. And it's just kind of goes back to what I was saying what James Carberry came up with content-based networking. It's an amazing way to meet people and learn people, and to become a forever learner. And so there's so many different things that I've learned in my career just for this short amount of time. But I just think that it's such an amazing opportunity, and literally, I think anyone can do it.
Absolutely. I started my show this year, I kind of shared with you my vision of creating a career library where people can just click on a link and be able to take you to that. But that's started by this is a podcast show first and foremost, an audio format, as well as it's kind of unique because it's digital too, and YouTube and Facebook and everything. But when I was growing up, and I'll take you back to my age, it was like Sally Jesse Raphael and Oprah and people like that. Those were considered talk shows. And that was the only podcast we had available because the technology was limited. And I always kind of was interested in that, but let's face it, it's kind of like being an NFL player, an NBA basketball player. There's only so many of those positions. And, but this format has allowed anybody that wants to have a voice or wants to help people to really be able to do that, right? As far as, anybody can start it.
To your point, kind of talking about like the Oprah and that media. So, back in the day, that was the only option. Those were the only channels that you had to be able to kind of let your voice be heard. You had to be on one of those shows to let your voice be heard, or be on the news or anything like that in the paper. But now with social media, with podcasting, with so many different opportunities to create your own media and have your own audience, this is a territory uncharted. Like this, I don't think we've even reached the max of where this will be going for in the future. I always wanted to be the next Oprah. I always wanted to have my own talk show. But in some media companies, your voice is limited to what they want you to say. Your voice, for me as a Black woman in America, there are a lot of things that I would like to talk about or express, that might not necessarily be welcome in certain platforms. And so being able to have your own media, you're able to let your voice be heard on your own terms. And I think that our generation is going to just see that increase just moving forward, because I can definitely say this generation is not one to be silenced. Everybody has a voice or something to say, some form of community that they belong to, and they want to express themselves. And it's only going to get bigger and better. And so now is the time to absolutely do that. And these platforms provide that.
You're right, because it's funny because I run the show. I can say what I want. Like I can say controversial statements in career statement, like nerd stuff. Like one of my famous saying where people get riled up is I say, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life passion. And so what you're passionate about should be taking over your life, and that's what you should be doing the most of. It kind of makes sense, but people are like, oh no, it's work-life balance, it's work-life balance. Well, from a corporate standpoint, that might be true, but I'm looking at it from a life perspective because I really want you to love your job. And that might be, going against the grain. It might be a little unpopular. Some people in HR might be like, ooh, that's kind of, but I can say it because it's like you said, it's owned media. So I did want to get to the questions that we had. We had a couple of students write in while we have you. So one of the students asked, and I'm sure everybody asks this, but what's the one way that they can grow their podcast and grow their followers?
Sure. So I think that it would be best to first research. Research is everything. See what other people are doing in the industry that you are looking to talk about. What are your, not necessarily competitors, but what are people saying that are common beliefs? And then what do you have to say that's different than those common beliefs? What's something that that you speak about that people speak about in your industry that you disagree with? Talk about that. Kind of like what you're saying, like this might be controversial, but it's your show. It's literally your voice. And so you can give them an alternative perspective and add value to people. That's the main thing. I think a lot of times I was listening to Gary Vee. We're big Gary Vee fans, and he was talking about how so many people try to hack the system. At like, what are these algorithms? Should I post at this time of day? Should I do this? Should I do that? And really, what he was saying was just add value to people. That's really what you should focus on. Focus on things that you would want to hear from people. Talk about your perspective on things that are different and add value to them in ways that other people will not. And your audience will come. They will find you. Of course, there are statistics on how you can post at a specific time of day, use specific hashtags, and things of that nature. But my main thing would be to add value in that sense, and make sure that it's genuine. You know what I mean? So
Right.
not just necessarily looking to increase your numbers. Your numbers will come. You will do that, but make sure that it's from a place of transparency and generosity.
Gotcha. And then another student writes in, can I make a living having my own podcast show?
Absolutely. There's so many people doing it. A lot of people get sponsorships. So you're able to get sponsorships through your podcast. You're able to do like a thing called like podcast sharing. So you could get on someone else's podcast and then welcome like the guest back onto your podcast. And that's a way to get your podcast promoted, because people, yes, podcasting is growing, but it's still unpopular enough to where we have so much more to grow. So there are people who are listening to people who listen to podcasts. If they're listening to podcasts already and you hop on somebody else's show, then you're gaining that audience because you're already reaching out to podcast people, if that makes sense. You're not reaching out to people who are not already listening to podcasts, which are great. But if you get people who are already, tuning in to someone else's podcast, it's definitely going to be easier for you to hop on that way. Then there are people who buy ad spots. You could do that as well. Or there's people who, again, like sponsorships, they'll reach out to you kind of like TikTok, they might ask you to do some product placement or things like that. So there's definitely multiple ways that you can get funding from your podcast.
Gotcha. So thanks for answering that. And then the last question a student writes in, how do you produce a show, a TV show, and what kind of major would they major in if they wanted to be a producer of a show?
Yeah, so it just depends. So it honestly depends on your school. My school, we offered broadcast, which was kind of through Convergent Journalism. And ultimately, I did want to be a television producer as well. So I'm still, searching.
That question's right up your alley.
Yeah, I'm still searching just like you. But this experience as a podcast producer gives me that leadership experience. It gives me that project management experience, being able to understand, like I said, the verbiage, speaking with the audio engineer, speaking with design, speaking with, people in the public relations era. So having all of those different facets relate to your degree, I would say if you can find a way to merge kind of journalism and PR, that's a really sweet spot. I felt really nervous when I chose my degree because on paper, like on the actual degree, it only says Bachelor's of General Studies. And I was like, no one's going to take me seriously seeing this on paper. They think general studies, she probably majored in gym class or something, And what one of my professors told me is like, whenever you are announcing yourself or introducing yourself, you understand and just explain to them what you went through and all those experiences. And so it might be different on what your school is doing, but I have found that combination of strategic communication and journalism, which journalism taught me the interview question side, it taught me the hosting side, it taught me how to record videos, do photography and audio, graphics, all of those things I got from journalism. But on the communication side of things, I understand building relationships, I understand doing the press release, I understand all the communication side of things as well. So public speaking, those are things that you're going to need to be holistic and well-rounded in that field. even if you're not the one in front of the camera. It just learning the things that would be behind the camera is just as important as being the one in front of the camera. And I know a lot of people only want to be that television talent, but it will make you stronger and give you a competitive advantage if you know both sides.
Great advice, just tremendous advice tonight. I appreciate you answering those questions from the students. I think that's a very, very solid advice. And one other thing, if you're struggling, you're a fifth year, sixth year senior, I always, like before, you can always finish your degree and decide to go into a career. And then you could either go back to school to get your master's, or you can get a career out there and then discover your passion from that point. So, don't, if you decide to switch to communications and you're almost one class away from getting an English degree, don't let that cancel that out. So just go ahead and finish your degree and get out there. Like you said, uncover stones, turn over every network, start building relationships and speaking. So Jay, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating interview and you have a fascinating career.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I just wish I would have had something like this when I was starting out. So this is amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And you have a great night.
Thank you. You too.